Hello, we are transmitting to you from our present, which we can only assume is your distant past, the turbulent time that was the early 21st century. Fearing the great cataclysm that will surely befall our civilization, we began this monumental reference of strange and obscure human knowledge. These recordings represent our attempt to compile and preserve wonders and esoterica that would otherwise be lost. Whether you're listening from an advanced civilization or have just reinvented the technology to decrypt our transmissions, this is our legacy to you. This is our time capsule. This is the Omnibus.
You have accessed entry 389.1SA2314, certificate number 48070, the Dyatlov Pass Incident.
3 cross-country skiers spot a solitary tent, partially collapsed by snow.
So, John, I'd love to ask if you have ever walked across Europe.
Ariela, I feel like you're baiting me now.
Just a little bit.
Well, as a matter of fact, yes, I have. I've walked across Europe, all the way across it, and I'm happy to tell you every little thing about it if you are interested. But go on.
Absolutely.
What made you think that, and why is that relevant to your story?
Well, I've heard tell that you may have walked across Europe once, twice, and this is I would say, European adjacent walk. So our story, our topic today, takes place in the Ural Mountains, so literally just over the mountain ridge into Asia. But I would say it's a very geographically close to European walking sort of story.
So there's a lot of long walks in human history. It was one of the things that inspired me was the idea that walking for a long time was something that was core to the human experience. And without walking for a really long time, you could only be a modern person. You could never be truly like a whole person. You couldn't understand being a human being outside of the context of cities and amenities, that somehow those things, I mean, in my mind at the time, those things were polluting us and distracting us or taking us away from our essence. And so I wanted to reconnect with that. Now, whether or not that's true, I think walking for a long time is indisputably true, but I'm not sure that it reset me in any profound way where I came back and was like, oh, I can smell colors now or anything like that. But have you
Give
ever
you a bank of human experiences?
Yeah, that's right. Bank of human experiences. I think that we talk a lot about generational trauma. We talk a lot about the body telling the story or holding the story or whatever that phrase is. And whether or not those things are in us as some kind of corpuscular memory that can be activated. I don't know. What's the longest walk you've ever done?
So my in-laws once did a segmented walk that was from their home in the UK to Istanbul. And I joined the Croatia leg of that. So that was about 4 or 5 days of maybe 20-ish miles or so most of the days. I like to say that I've been to Croatia and mostly saw cornfields. and villages that kind of still had remnants of prior conflicts. So it wasn't kind of the yacht week experience that many people have when they go to that beautiful part of the world, but very interesting nonetheless.
You kind of buried the lead here, that you actually have in-laws who have walked from England to Istanbul. That seems like a fairly unusual thing for a futureling to, an unusual sort of coincidence that a futureling would have that. How long did it take them in their segmented process?
It took them a few years. They started when they were still working. They've since retired. So they started, I want to say, probably around 2012-ish and finished around the pandemic, so around 2020. But it was, they kind of covered segments, and some were easier than others depending on, whether they were in the Alps or walking on kind of flat terrain. And some were certainly more scenic. What
inspired them to do this?
Yeah, my father-in-law, I would say in particular, he's definitely one for the kind of epic journey. He's done Land's End to John O'Groats by foot, I think rail, ship, and maybe some other vehicle that's not or mode of transportation that's not occurring to me right now.
Donkey.
He's one for a project, right? Yeah. Riding on a cat. I'm not sure, something like that.
But of all the destinations, I mean, I guess it is logical to go from England to Istanbul. I didn't use that much imagination to pick those 2 points. It seemed like one was over here and the other was over there, right? That makes pretty good sense. So I can see where he would have come up with that idea.
I think it's kind of the start, of kind of one totally different type of like culture and civilization to another. Maybe that was kind of the idea of it, that it's a real, kind of geographical and like cultural boundaries kind of place. But the story today takes place in a kind of similar-ish type of area, right in the divide between Europe and Asia. Are you familiar with this story at all?
Well, I am, and but only just a little.
Okay.
This is a part of the world that I've wanted to journey to and haven't had the opportunity. Or, I mean, I guess I did have the opportunity and didn't take the opportunity.
Yeah, and I years ago I actually was able to take the Trans-Siberian Railroad. So I went from Moscow to Beijing when during a time where it was easier for U.S. passport holding folks to do so. And this was about 2017 or so. And one thing that really struck me was how big Russia is and how much of it is real wilderness.
When we talked in our get to know me conversation for the last half an hour, you described yourself as a woman living in Astoria, Queens. Mm-hmm. And we talked, about a little bit about you growing up and a little bit about your family history, but you did not in any way suggest that you were the type of person who had taken the Trans-Siberian Railroad. And I feel like if I had ever taken it, which I always dreamed to do, that would be something that I would mention. I would bring that up when I was shaking hands with someone new. Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you. Oh, did you know, have I ever told you about the time that I took the Trans-Siberian Railroad? And so you and I feel like we already have gotten to know each other pretty well, but then you drop this little tidbit. So let me just ask you before we go any further, what are the top 5 adventures that you've undertaken in your, what I would consider young life, other than this epic and, or in addition to this epic and kind of once in a lifetime trip that you just toss off like, oh yeah. No. Oh, also I walked across Croatia, but what else? What else have we got under there?
Going to the Arctic Circle in Norway to see the Northern Lights has got to be up there. I know that probably for an Alaskan, the Northern Lights feel a little bit pedestrian, but for someone who grew up in New York City with lots of light pollution, it had always been a dream of mine to see them. So I went to Norway for about 4 days, a very speedy trip, and got to see them in Tromsø. Have you ever been up that way?
No, I've never been north of Oslo in Norway, but I know where Tromsø is. In fact, I think I have a friend that lives there. But
that was great.
Was that 4-day trip to see the Northern Lights in Arctic Norway tacked on to a different trip, or did you just fly to Norway for 4 days, see the Northern Lights, and turn around and go home?
That was it. One night in Oslo, and I think 3 nights in Tromsø. So it was a very mission-oriented, lucky trip because, as you know, if there's cloud cover, you can't see the Northern Lights. So
sure, it's a roll of the dice.
They broke for one night. Yeah.
And was it a magical experience?
Oh, absolutely. It was phenomenal. Really great.
Okay,
yeah,
so
Northern, got to be up there.
Like Arctic Norway, you've got walk across Croatia, you've got a Trans-Siberian Express. You got 2 others?
Yeah, I would say going to the outback in Australia. I lived in Australia for a year. I spent a year working in Sydney and went before leaving the country after living there for a year, wanted to see kind of lots of the different sides of that amazing, like, wild country, and got to go to Uluru. And that was really incredible to be able, and in the space of a week, went to Uluru and the Great Barrier Reef and saw just this incredible contrast it's not that far apart geographically, but it also is, that was really wild and incredible.
What were you doing in Sydney for a year? What is the point of a half-hour long conversation of get to know me when it's just like, oh, and also like we didn't talk about any of these things, but it's like, wow, that's pretty good. What were you doing in Sydney?
Yeah, so I think honestly, at the time, I just been in I went to grad school in the UK, and
okay, that's also something that you didn't bring up. You went to grad school in the UK for what?
Yeah, for history.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Yeah, I have what my parents would probably call 2 useless degrees in history sitting on my wall.
Bravo.
But yeah, thank you. Mm-hmm. So after going to grad school in the UK, where I'd already started dating my now husband, who's a Brit. Honestly, I think we were kind of looking for a place where we could both go without having to marry each other yet. And Australia was really high on the list for a place that we could both get visas to work and live for a year without having to really do a lot or prove a lot at the time. It was called a working holiday visa, where you could get a job for up to 6 months.
And this was just a ploy to keep your parents off the scent and not pressure you to get married? This was just like, oh, yeah, we're going to do this other thing instead of...
It was, also mostly just because having 2 different passports, we kind of needed to eventually get married to live in the same place when I had finished grad school.
I see.
So we kind of knew that there was going to be probably a deciding point, but that Australia seemed like a nice place that neither of us had ever, well, he had been before I had it.
Well, you've got me beat in the having been to Australia, which I never have, and Trans-Siberian Railroad, also pretty great, and north of the Arctic Circle in Norway. What's your 5th amazing trip that you've taken?
Ooh, 5th amazing trip.
Don't tell me that we've run out of amazing trips at 4.
No. I would say probably Argentina. I spent a semester living in Argentina in college, and 10 out of 10 recommend it. Going to the salt flats in the north of the country and Patagonia in the south, and just the pampas and grass as far as the eye can see. Just an incredible country at contrasts.
I'm starting to detect a theme, which is you like going places where there aren't any people, and it's a vast, unexplored wilderness. We've got of your 5 amazing trips, fully 4 of them are to places where it's just like plateau.
Yeah.
What's going on? Have you ever thought about that? Have you ever looked into that?
I guess it's it's the irony of somebody who born and raised in Manhattan, and probably one of the densest places, at least in this hemisphere, and feels like when you're traveling, when you're trying to escape the hustle bustle of it all, that you want some kind of contrast.
Well, the great state of Alaska awaits you. It's got lots and lots of variations on that theme.
Oh, I'd absolutely love to visit. I've never been.
Well, it's probably not that different from the Urals, where you have been trying to rejoin your story. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the Ural Mountains?
Sure. So, yeah, this is a story that I do not have any kind of personal connection to it. I actually discovered that this kind of mystery when I was awake in the middle of the night, feeding a newborn in the early months of the pandemic. And one of the favorite ways I found to keep myself awake was looking at the Wikipedia page of Unsolved Mysteries. And this was something which is, I think, a real omnibus.
It's very mom-coded, and I've never 100% understood why it is that modern moms and unsolved mysteries are so really mated with one another. But go on.
Yeah, and I think that this one stood out to me. There's a lot of elements. There's a lot of omnibusy elements. So it's a Soviet story for sure. Mm-hmm. That there's some UFOs, maybe. It's deep Cold War.
Is it compatible with Marxism, or is it not compatible with Marxism?
I would say it is pretty compatible with Marxism. Okay. I think. I'll set the scene. There are a group of student hikers, mostly student hikers, and they are setting out from the Ural Polytechnic Institute. It's a group originally of 10 people. It's students, recent grads. There's a mystery man. So I'll tell you a little bit more about him.
Mystery man. Okay.
There's a mystery man. And they're setting out from their university to go on this big hike. It's a grade 3 expedition. I don't know if you're a big hiker. I'm not particularly, but this was the highest grade hike that was available to Soviet hikers at the time. You can now go up to a grade 5. I don't know if if that means the classification has evolved or
that's grade
the hikes
inflation.
Have gotten harder.
It's just grade inflation.
It is January 1959. And this group of students, I'll tell you a couple of their names. I won't go into all of them just to save people from listening to me mispronounce even more Russian names.
That's the most omnibus coded thing there is.
I think it's peak omnibus. Uh-huh. So there's the leader, Igor Dyatlov. So he's right there in the title of the story. So he's important. He's an engineering student who organizes the whole thing. He's 23 years old. So you'll hear a theme here, which is these people are kids. They're super young, but they're all very experienced outdoors people. Mm-hmm. There is Zina, which I think is a really great name. Kolmogorova. She's 22, super strong hiker. She's well liked among the group. There is a woman named Ludmila Dubinina, 20, one of the group's youngest. A guy named Yuri Yudin. There's 3 Yuris in this story. The story is lousy with Yuris.
Sure. Everybody in Canada is named Gord. Right. Everyone in Russia is named Yuri.
Yeah, it's Gord's all the way down. Yuri's all the way down. He is 21. He turned back 5 days into this trip. So He is noted for not having completed it, which turned out to be, probably a lucky miss on his part. But he had a couple health issues. He had some joint pain and like rheumatism, and so because of that, he was in a lot of pain.
Given that you use the word incident in the title of your story, I'm guessing that the guy that turned around after 5 days probably got off easy, not included in the incident.
Spoiler alert, yes. So you ideally don't want to be on this hike after like day 5. So, I mean, I personally don't think I would have wanted to be on this hike after day 1, but I think that he turned around at the right moment.
Generally, I think anytime you're on any kind of adventure, you want to wrap it up before the word incident gets applied to whatever it is that you were doing.
100%. And that the final person I'll name here, actually last 2, is Alexander Kolevatov. And again, apologies for my pronunciation across the board, but it's omnibus. He's 24, a little bit older. He worked in a nuclear facility before going back to school. This is also a little bit relevant. So he finished his degree after taking a little break to be involved in nuclear weapons development in a facility in Moscow. So
1959, This would have been very, very high Cold War.
Correct. Peak space race, peak Cold War. The final mystery man I alluded to on this trip, he's 38, so quite a bit older. Yeah. And this features into a lot of the mystery that surrounds this incident. So he joins as a late replacement for someone who had dropped out of the group. And he wasn't super close to the rest of the group. The guy's name is Semyon Zolotaryov. Apparently he also went by Sasha. He's a decorated World War II veteran who had served in Siberia. So, the timing for that kind of makes sense. He also apparently had some really mysterious tattoos. So like kind of a slightly shady character in a lot of the photos that were found with this group. He is a little bit kind of standing apart. Maybe he wasn't as close to the rest of the group. And he preferred to go by Sasha. And apparently he also had a secret camera on him.
Do you feel like he's an NKVD agent? Is in your secret spy investigations, does he seem like he's there monitoring them?
I think he could be. I think much more likely he's just a guy who wanted to go on a hike. Mm-hmm. I think there's this story has like quite a few potential red herrings, and I feel like there's a lot of mystery around this guy, which is very kind of intriguing. I suspect he probably was just on a hike, but you can be the judge and let me know what you think.
Well, yeah, you're going to give us all the evidence, so
I'll do my best.
Hey, it's Manager Grant. Hey, Grant, thanks for stopping by.
Hey, John. Good to see you.
Yeah, what are you doing? I haven't seen you in a while.
Oh, living life, ordering things online as one does.
Oh, yeah. You like to order things online. I know that about you. You ordered anything good online lately?
Well, actually, interestingly enough, my family has been ordering some stuff from Quince recently.
Oh, Quince. They're a sponsor of our program.
They are a sponsor. We had to get some sandals for the summer for my young daughter.
Yeah,
my almost teenage daughter, and a duvet cover. It was very
wow. Yeah. And you got both of those things at Quince?
Both at Quince, believe it or not. Yeah, and they're pretty great. My daughter's very excited about her duvet cover. It's the color she wanted. Nice print, nice color, good, nice and soft feeling. It's good, and the sandals I think are gonna do well.
What's funny is I think of Quince as primarily a menswear website, but of course they sell every kind of product. But I really like their men's clothes. I like to dress up and look sharp, and
you do.
Quince has all kinds of like cool linen stuff for summer, like a lot of deceptively sophisticated things, but affordable because of their direct to consumer supply chain.
Yeah. And with the sandals, we actually ordered a couple and then returns the one that didn't fit. So it's super easy, very easy, nice and easy.
So how long before you and your wife are just shopping
All
exclusively at Quince? Yeah.
Well, I'm not quite the menswear aficionado that you are, but maybe I should. There's time. There's time and age to come to do it all.
I think, well, now wait a minute. Age doesn't have to be a requirement. But I think I could picture you in a kind of Quince themed wardrobe because it's casual, but it's sophisticated. Mm-hmm. The stuff they've got for sale now is lightweight and summery. I think you could kind of bump up your game.
Well, my game does need to be bumped up, I think, especially if I'm sitting next to you. So it's good. Yeah. It's good. I'll go peruse next time we're going to do an order and see if I can get an item or two to look better on camera when we do the addenda show.
The thing is, you're still wearing those indie rock skinny jeans, and your daughter, now that she's a teen, those skinny jeans are going to look cringe. You're going to need some...
So cringe. I'm very late 2000s, early 2010s, and she's just like, what? Where are the baggy? Come on. What are you doing?
Yeah, styles have changed.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to encourage all of the Futurelings listening, and I'm going to encourage you, Grant, to refresh your everyday with luxury you'll actually use. This is the way I normally talk. I want you to refresh your everyday with luxury you'll actually use by going to quince.com/omnibus. That's QUINCE.com/omnibus for free shipping on your order, 365-day returns, as you have already pointed out.
Yep.
It's now available in Canada for all of our dedicated Canadian listeners that are grateful that Ken is no longer here to slander their country. Go to QUINCE.com/omnibus. Free shipping, 365 days returns. Days returns. Quince.com/omnibus. Grant, next time I see you.
Luxury I'll actually use.
It's January 23rd. It's late January. And the groups they're starting out from Sverdlovsk, which is now Yekaterinburg. So I didn't realize that a lot of the names of places in the then Soviet Union have kind of been renamed. So they've experienced kind of a renaming and then a renaming. So Sverdlovsk was renamed in 1924. It had been Yekaterinburg and is now again Yekaterinburg. It was renamed in 1924, fun fact, after a Bolshevik who was friends with Lenin and had apparently directly ordered the deaths of the Romanovs. So there's a Romanov tie-in to the name.
I'm so glad.
I haven't brought up the Nazis just yet, although I guess that we do have Semyon, who was in the army in World War II. So I guess there is already a Nazi tie-in, sort of.
So we're down we're close to Kazakhstan in this story. We're kind of down in the south of Russia.
It's like I would say like mid Russia. So like kind of mid Russia, I think that's probably the official name for it. So like right on the Ural Mountains, and kind of like if you think about like kind of where Moscow is, and like you draw kind of a line due east, quite a bit due east, you'll wind up roughly around. So not that far south.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. For where most of the story is taking place. This group, they set off from, at the time, Sverdlovsk, and they start on train. So just like me, they start their Russian journey by train. And they go to a logging town first, and they stop there, and they spend the night. Then the kind of train options, I guess, peter out. They hitchhike by truck. They've got this whole route planned out, and they're kind of getting to where they need to be. They wind up hitchhiking to this remote logging camp called Second Northern, which to me, in my uneducated opinion, sounds very Alaska coded.
It does. Second Northern feels like a trucking company that I would be very familiar with, and like there are a lot of But that's true in the United States. There are a lot of things that are called Great Northern, in the UK too. Great Southern, Great Western, where it's like, come on, you guys, come up with another. I guess it's a form of advertising. Like, it's not like the lame Northern.
It's the best.
It's inviting you to go, but this doesn't feel like it's in the North at all. So Second Northern, what are they talking about?
Yeah, and I guess it's like maybe the second northern logging camp in that area. I feel like that's kind of probably both rural Russia and also Alaska coded in places where you've got these great expanses and you kind of run out of names. That places also just kind of wind up being like the third southern lake or the fifth eastern field. They wind up, they're in like a mostly abandoned logging camp. And from this point forward, they're on skis. So up to this point, they've been kind of walking. I don't want to say it's been breezy, but they've had some nights in logging camps and in these small rural villages. I would imagine there's like nights around a fire. Maybe there's some vodka. It's relatively merry. It's cold. It's January, in rural Russia. But I think it's pretty breezy to this point. But pretty soon after this is January 28th. Yuri Yudin, he says, I'm out. I can't take this any longer. My joints are killing me. I'm going to catch a ride back, from the last place that we saw people. So he hightails it out. And that is, spoiler, the last he sees his friends alive. So he turns back at this point before the incident happens.
Now, is the historic record, is it silent on this, or is there some or any evidence that there is smooching going on between the young people on the trip?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. I think there is some evidence that there's some tensions. So it's interesting, right? Because it's a mixed gendered group and they know each other decently well, with the exception of Semyon, our 38-year-old guy who's just kind of joined at the last minute. So it seems like they're pals. But uniquely, I think for a group like this, it's generally the vibes are platonic. Mm-hmm. So I think more kind of an outdoors club that's on a trek versus a bunch of, couples on a couples trip.
Got it. Well, yeah, and they all would have been comrades in a glorious Soviet Socialist Republic. So, yep. That was the very beginning of I don't even see color or gender. Right. So I'm sure they were just as chaste and probably blonde as a group could be.
Yeah, totally above board. Mm-hmm. And very serious about their hiking. Mm-hmm. And, if you can see the photos of this, they're wearing lots of layers. So that from that perspective, probably pretty chaste.
Right.
So their destination is Mount Otorten. It's Otorten. And as far as like mountains go, again, I'm not a big like mountaineering person, but it's about 1,200 meters, so 4,000 feet, which doesn't seem very high to me as far as mountains go. And looking at pictures of the actual mountain, it doesn't seem that challenging, and it wasn't supposed to be like the hard part of their hike. So that's and I'm guessing in Alaska terms, like and even West Coast terms generally, 4,000 feet's like it's a molehill, right?
Yeah, it's not that big, but 4,000 feet in January is a completely different animal, right?
Yeah. So that's the challenge, I think, and the challenge is really the duration of the hike and the rural nature. They're far from supply lines. So they're kind of packing in, packing out, and the idea is that they've got everything kind of on their backs. So it's been a couple of days since Yuri leaves them, and it's February 1st. So he leaves them January 28th, and now it's February 1st. And they're hiking along. Things have been going okay. And the weather starts to take a turn for the worse. So they kind of drift off the intended path. And Dyatlov he was our kind of fearless leader. He's been plotting the course. and the others are involved, but he's kind of leading the way. And they realize pretty soon that they are on the slopes of a mountain called Kholat or Kholat Syakhl, which translates into Dead Mountain. And that is in the language, that's not in Russian. It's in a language spoken by the local Mansi people. So it's a local indigenous tribe in that area. And that adds like some kind of, I think, creepiness to this whole story, because the mountain translates as Dead Mountain.
Dead Mountain.
So that's, you don't really want to be on Dead Mountain, probably.
That is a great song lyric. Oh my God. You don't want to be on Dead Mountain. God, let me read.
Well, yeah, you don't want to be there. The gist is that probably just means it's like barren and it's bad hunting ground. So it's probably not dead like death, probably dead like, not great for finding food.
Right.
So Dyatlov clocks that they're not on the right course, and they've got two options. They're kind of on the side of this mountain slope. So one is you go downhill and you can shelter in kind of a foresty area. Option two is you camp where you are versus what seems like backtracking. And Dyatlov makes the call. He says, we're going to just camp right here where we are. They put up the tent, and that evening they're having a pretty good time. It seems like they put together a joke little newspaper. So, kind of a fun, random fact about this. They call it the Evening o' Torten. So it's like a parody joke oniony paper. That this group puts together, like joking about how bad their supplies are and all sorts of stuff. So some people have read into that, but
did
it
they
seems
bring
like
a printing press? How did they publish a newspaper?
So that's just handwritten.
Oh, I see.
It's like, they're just pen and papering it. And I think it's, they didn't have Instagram. They're trying to keep themselves occupied around the campfire kind of thing.
So in this sense, Dyatlov has parked them in what you're describing as an exposed area. He's not taken them into any kind of sheltered cove.
Right. So they're on the side of a mountain. So they are it doesn't seem like it's not a particularly steep slope. So estimates put it, and this is also relevant, about 30, possibly less degrees. And this is important because I don't know if Dyatlov would have known this specific fact that I learned while researching, but 30 degrees is about I don't want to say sweet spot, but that's about the incline where your avalanche risk starts. So he might have clocked it as this seems like insufficiently steep for us to have to worry about that.
Yeah, right. 30% is right at the break point, right? Everything below 30, no avalanche. And then starting above 30 is the danger zone.
Exactly. So he might have assessed this as seems low risk. And, I think it's a little bit of a kind of judgment call, as you'll see, as in terms of what happens. So sometime during the night, as you can probably tell how this story is going, this story takes the turn that we know it will, right? And what we find, we don't exactly know, and I think that's why this is an incident, because there's no video footage. There's some photos from before, there's some photos from after, but there's no survivors. So there's no one who can live to tell the tale of what happened, that we know of anyway. And there's no direct evidence of the play-by-play of what unfolds during that night. What we know is when the site is found, there is a tent. So they're all in the single tent, and it's found to be partially collapsed. It was cut open from the inside. Their boots, their coats, their cold weather gear were all like in the tent. There are also some footprints showing that they walked downhill away from the tent towards the woods. A couple of them look to have been barefoot or in socks. Yep. So that's kind of crazy. And the footprints are orderly. So it looks like it happened kind of not in a major rush situation, which I've never been in an avalanche, but I would imagine if you're in an avalanche, there would probably be some kind of a run. Like you'd probably want to try and outrun it. I don't know
So the tent is collapsed, but it's not buried. It's just flat, and there wasn't any reason, as far as they could tell, that they didn't just go out of the tent via the normal egress route of the flap, the door.
Yeah, it's like it's got a little bit of snow on it. It's not totally buried like you'd expect if it was kind of under a massive avalanche. And so at this point, this was the night February 1st to 2nd, and they were expected back around February 12th. And of course, this is, it's a different era. When they weren't back like a week later, people started to get worried. So, relatives are saying, I haven't heard anything, that the university is aware that these kids have not returned. So that the university, Ural Polytechnic, actually sets up like a search party. And it's a bunch of like primarily student volunteers. Some local Mansi tribe members had been involved in this search. And apparently the Soviet authorities were kind of slow to actually send an official response, which is, I think, an interesting bit. But it's February 26th when searchers finally find the tent.
Oh, wow.
And that's what they find first. So yeah, it's half buried. There's also some cameras there, plus that extra camera that Semyon, our older traveler, had brought with him. And then they find the bodies. So they are looking around the area, and they find some footprints leading away from the tent. These footprints have been preserved, I guess, because it's so cold and the snow is like a dry snow, that it's preserved the footprints kind of in the snow, even though other snow has fallen on top of it. Basically, there's like imprints of these footprints in the snow. And they find two bodies a little distance away from the tent, two bodies beneath a tree that look like they have tried to build a fire. And it's two of the Yuris who are on this trip, not, of course, the Yuri who had turned away. One of them appears to have bitten his own hand. So that's kind of interesting and weird. There's some theories as to why. One idea is like, maybe if you're losing feeling, it's a way that you're trying to see if you can feel your hand, but looks like he's bitten his own hand. There's also some nearby tree branches that look broken. Maybe somebody had tried to climb it and see what they could see or get to safety. They keep looking. They find there's three more bodies, and they're between the tree and the tent. They seem to be turning back uphill. And that's Zina and Dyatlov and another guy named Rustam. And the cause of death is pretty quickly determined to be hypothermia for all three of them. There's no like weird markings on either of them. They haven't tried to bite their hands. The other two guys also eventually determined to be hypothermia as well. So relatively straightforward. They got out into the elements in some way, but that killed them. And the remaining four, so this is, we're at 5 people of the original 9, plus the one who had turned back. So the original 4 are found, but not till May. So this is like 3 months later. And they're in a deep ravine, and their injuries are weird. So, yeah. So this is where things get a little mysterious. So there's Ludmila. Remember, she's the one who gave Yuri Yudin the teddy bear. She has crushed ribs. And one of the other guys has a fractured skull. It looks like they've been in a car crash, but there's like no real outside wounds. So they've got these kind of like internal injuries. But it's consistent with kind of like a really, really extreme impact, not like, person on person combat or anything like that. So there's these strange.
And not like climbed a tree and fell out of it. It's something more extreme than that.
Yep. These guys also have this, like orange brown discoloration on their skin, which, just to like dispel any of the kind of weirder theories, I think now we sense that it's like pretty normal decomposition stuff, but it weirded people out. It was enough that it's like noted in the official, like records, and people thought it was weird.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some weirdness going on with that group of 4 people who's like found much later. And there's like a whole category I wrote as the title for this section of my notes. I wrote weird stuff that they found.
Okay.
So here's some other weird stuff that was found in the scene. So first, radiation. So a couple of the bodies have low levels of radiation found on their clothing. So the kooky theory, which is like maybe more or less kooky depending on what you believe, is that parachute mines are being tested in the area. And that it's some kind of like, or some kind of Soviet weapons testing happening in the area.
So two questions.
Yep.
Why did the search team have a Geiger counter?
Right.
And is it possible that the radioactivity was on their clothes as a result of having been at a polytechnic university and is just not related to this at all?
Yeah. So the first one, I don't really know. Maybe that's standard Soviet search party practice, or maybe it was detected only in the lab after.
Sure. I mean, see this over here. This is
there you go.
a Geiger counter right there. So,
I mean, you would have, I think, grab it if you go out on a search party in the mountains.
I carry it everywhere. Yeah.
You've got to. So, I think there's two like not kooky theories for why. So if you remember, there's the one guy who was like 24, slightly older than the rest of the group, but not quite the 38-year-old.
Right.
So he had taken a slight detour from his university time to work in a nuclear facility before going back. So possible that radiation had kind of infiltrated his clothing from his work, probably not using the best protection. And maybe that had kind of stuck with him. The other, probably even more likely theory here is that lanterns at the time, so like specifically the mantle, which I guess is kind of the lampshady bit of a lantern.
It's the part that burns, actually. The mantle is a little fabric bag.
Like the little Philly,
Yeah, it's the filament, but it's a little sack that burns without burning.
Oh, so you can see how frequently I camp by my use of lanterns, I guess. But
these days they have other lanterns or other devices that make light that don't require that you burn a little bag.
Right, especially not one that had thorium in it, because that's what they had, and that's radioactive. So that's possible as a source of radioactivity on their bodies.
Okay.
We're not totally sure.
I'm guessing that the search party and the forensic investigators probably knew what dead bodies looked like and knew what frozen people looked like. And so the fact that they're noting all of this stuff without like saying, as per usual, these bodies are orange and brown, they're noting it because it's unusual.
Exactly. And here's another unusual thing. So Ludmilla, she is missing her tongue and her eyeballs.
Okay. That seems more unusual than just even having your head bashed in.
Yep.
No tongue, no eyeballs. All right.
No, you're going to look creepy. And that's not, you don't want to be in that condition. Semyon's also missing his eyeballs. He's got his tongue, missing his eyeballs. This is one where it probably looks creepier than it actually is. Theories are mostly that it's animals. This is all from the group that's found a couple months later. So it's possible they were slightly uncovered by kind of scavenging mammals.
But again, this seems like something that people who were experienced in mountain rescue would know if the shrews typically ate your eyeballs.
Yeah. And like, why the eyeballs? Are they delicious? I'm not sure.
I don't think they are. I think that shrews would eat a lot of things. They'd eat your nose, first of all, I think, or they'd try and everybody wants to eat a liver. All the animals are trying to eat livers. I don't think eyeballs have a ton of delicious
iron or whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So the eyeballs are gone. Her tongue's gone. Okay. And another weird thing is the lead investigator on the case in the time, so 1959, Lev Ivanov, said there were weird glowing objects seen in the sky locally. This was also corroborated by some other groups of hikers and folks who had been in the area. So like kind of glowing orbs in the sky. There are lots of reports of that in the area at the time. It's not in the official investigation documents produced at the time, but before he passes away, the lead investigator comes back to this stuff in the 90s and says, like, this is an important note. I have to make sure, it's reflected here.
Glowing orbs.
Glowing orbs. So is this, UFOs? Could be. That's the question of, I think that, like, is there a weird angle here where, like, what's happening in the sky? Probably the kind of logical explanation, like with the radioactive stuff and the animals. I think there's like the grounded explanation here, which is it's probably some non-nuclear military testing. So like this is right around, this is 1959. So Luna 1 apparently had just been launched in January. This is the first rocket that escaped gravity. And there's a lot of rocket testing, not happening right there, but like not crazy far away where you might have been able to see it in the sky. Could have also been atmospheric phenomena like aurora.
Oh, that's what they always want you to think. They always want you to think it's ball lightning or a weather balloon.
Could it be UFOs? Sure. And I think that's an attractive theory for this situation, right?
And you're a millennial. You're being inclusive of all theories.
100%. I have to make sure that I am also just covering all the ground, with varying degrees of probability here. So the theories on like what happened, right? And I'll kind of give them in order from most likely to least likely.
Now, wait, I think I may have interrupted you. Of the 4 that were found down in the ravine, one of them lost his tongue or her tongue. 2 lost their eyeballs. And what about, and there was a brain, skull crushing and some rib crushing. What else?
Yep. That's it. They're like also hypothermia like the rest of them. So it's like 30, negative 30 degrees Celsius. So, negative 22 Fahrenheit. Wind chill makes it negative 50 degrees Celsius or negative 58 Fahrenheit. So that's cold as hell, I think,
it is.
right?
It's very cold.
So, they've left a lot of their gear in the tent. So I think that alone, would probably be enough to kind of, dispatch you without a lot of time in that kind of environment.
How many of them are barefoot?
I don't have the total number, but most of them they've left the tent without their full gear for sure. Yeah. Like almost all of them are not wearing full gear. And I think about half of them are shoeless. Some are sockless too.
Wow.
The ideas on that are, there's this paradoxical undressing that can happen. When you get hypothermia, that all the blood kind of flows and makes you feel extra hot. So you start to, and I think it's been documented for many cases where you start to take off your clothes because you feel really hot, but it means that you've actually just lost all sensation and it's your body's kind of last ditch attempt. So there's some theories about that, but the clothing's all left in the tent. So I don't 100% buy that.
Right. And that doesn't explain why they would cut the tent in the first place. And the thing is, everybody knows if you're all together, that's how you stay warm. You don't stay warm by taking off all your clothes, and you wouldn't be so cold in the tent. The tent would retain enough warmth for that. That's why we have tents.
That's why we have tents. Right. So they probably would have been okay. They might have been okay if they'd stayed in the tent. We don't know. So in terms of the theories on like what happened, the number one theory, I would say, from kind of the most reputable sources and analysis here is it's a slab avalanche. Are you familiar with that term?
Sure.
Slab avalanche?
Sure,
Okay.
slab avalanche.
Yeah,
It's
slabalanche.
Slabalanche. It's just, I mean, often the most dangerous avalanches are with the snow conditions. They end up with layers that are more or less stable, and the what appears to be a stable layer of snow actually has a thin sort of crust that is shite underneath it, and then the snow will slide across the top of the other snow. Yeah. And it gets going very fast, and it's like it's one of the dangerous kinds of avalanche. Not that there are like tons of safe kinds of avalanche, but
right.
Slab is the one that catches you by surprise, I think.
Yeah, and I think apparently they can often be like smaller in kind of size and scale in terms of overall volume of snow moved, I guess, just because of the dynamics. So it can take you a little bit like more by surprise just because of it can happen on a smaller scale. They also, they're on a hill, so the wind kind of shifts the snow over hours, and it's creating this gradual pileup. And they're thinking that this may have led to a sensation where it's kind of partially crushing the tent, feeling a little bit unstable, which is why they cut out of there. And it's not maybe an all at once avalanche onto the tent where they're thinking, we've got to get out this second or don't even have time to react. It's more of this feels like we don't have time to kind of pick up the tent, but we should get out. What's interesting here is there were a lot of questions about this. And there's a guy at a snow avalanche, like an avalanche center in Switzerland, the avalanche department of Switzerland, called Johann Gohm. And I think it's kind of fun that he saw the movie Frozen and was like really impressed by Disney's realistic snow in the movie. Ooh, and asked for their code. He gets the Disney snow code. And apparently it's like uniquely good at actually modeling how snow physics works, like visually and in like creating recreations of like avalanche conditions. So I assume he's like adding it to his own existing models at, the Avalanche Center in Switzerland.
When he says code, the movie Frozen is an animated film, but made by computers. And when he says code, somebody has programmed a simulator.
Yep.
And now it's being used by real snow scientists.
Yeah. So the snow that, my preschool aged kids like saw, when there's like Disney princesses running around is, I guess, powered by ones and zeros behind the scene, and apparently is pretty realistic per, Mr. Avalanche himself.
Right on.
So he takes that, and he and some other avalanche themed professors, a geotech professor named Alexander Puzkin in Zurich, they take this tech and they make a Dyatlov model in 2021. And before this, it had kind of been like theorized it's probably an avalanche. We think it's an avalanche. But there's some questions, right? Because there's like no debris field. There's no snow pile that was found. The bodies were buried pretty shallow, especially the ones that were found early on. So it's like there's questions that remain and that seemed kind of unresolved until this Frozen Disney informed snow modeling happens. And using the Disney code, they modeled that a small slab would have barely left a trace, and it would have led to the type of conditions discovered by the search and rescue or just search team that found the tent at the end of February. So they basically kind of feel that they've definitively proved that the ground also was just steep enough. So it's just hits the 30 degrees that would have permitted avalanche conditions to happen. Also, that it explains the injuries that the group suffered perfectly.
It does, except the people that the person with a skull fracture and the person with the ribs crushed are also the furthest from the tent. So
Right.
Carried away by the avalanche, or that with their broken ribs and crushed head, they were the ones that were like, we're out of here.
Yeah, and apparently the guy with the skull fracture had I think started to walk away a little bit. So there's some movement that's also happening. It's not. I think one of the very eerie parts of this is it doesn't seem like the end was instant.
Yeah.
So that's part of the, I think, mystery and enduring creepiness of this whole situation. There's also kind of a part 2 of this theory, which is, have you ever heard of a katabatic? I don't know if I'm saying that totally correctly, but that's omnibus coded, I guess. So katabatic winds?
No, I have not.
So it's a violent downhill wind that can appear very suddenly in mountainous conditions. Katabatic, I looked this up because I had never heard that word before, but katabasis is apparently an ancient Greek word usually used to describe a hero's journey to the underworld and often back. So that's kind of eerie, but just the origin of the word. But this kind of very strong, gusty wind is thought to be probably the precipitating event for this type of avalanche. In this case, anyway. So
Catabasis on Dead Mountain is another great science fiction title, at least.
Yeah, you don't want to wind up in a catabasis on Dead Mountain.
So the wind would blow would incite the avalanche, but the wind isn't going to explain any of the injuries or the positioning of the bodies.
Yeah, the wind also may have been scary, strong, spooky enough for them to want to leave the tent. It might have seemed like the tent was going to blow away or something like that. So they're thinking also that the katabatic winds load a multiple of the amount of snow that would have been piled on. Otherwise. So it all kind of happens in a way that's catalyzed by these super strong winds on the uphill side of the tent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's the side that's partially collapsed. So on the kind of uphill side. So the katabatic winds plus the avalanche seem like the 2 dominant theories. To kind of lay out all the other slightly off the wall theories, there's the military testing, of course.
Right.
Very little evidence for this, and there's no blast marks, there's no shells, there's no evidence for that. Of course, some of the truth uncoverers might say that of course there wouldn't be.
Right. But also, nuclear powered orbs.
That's
by definition, they leave no trace except for radioactivity and a bunch of dead students.
Right, and missing eyeballs.
Right.
So
so that's one theory.
That's one theory. Semyon, so there's the mystery 38-year-old, who is is he someone who is there because, like you suggested, maybe he's a government operative? Does he discover something he doesn't like? Why does he have an extra camera nobody knows about? And there's a bunch of kind of secret-y kind of photos that are uncovered on his film.
Oh.
Just taken of the group, nothing super untoward, but what's up with that? Why is he there? And he's a little bit of a mystery character. There's not a lot that I could find about him or that other folks could find about him in his military. He served in the Soviet Army, in the Red Army for 5 years, but I couldn't find out a ton about that. And why was he with this group of people who's young enough to be his kids?
So none of the students have any kind of backstory that might justify a NKVD or KGB agent committing a mass murder suicide in order to eliminate them from the earth. It's not like one of them is this child of a Politburo member. There's nobody there that that needs to be eliminated at the expense of everyone else?
Doesn't seem that way. There's the one guy who worked in a nuclear facility in Moscow, but it doesn't seem, he left and went back to finish his degree. It doesn't seem like, he was kind of the linchpin of the Soviet weapons program, most likely.
Got it.
So also possible, but it doesn't seem. UFOs, I think we've talked about that a little bit, like perhaps.
Always a possibility.
Always a possibility. There was a very early, I'll say the final theory, and I think the least likely, maybe a second to only UFOs, is that the local indigenous people, attacked this group or were in some way involved. That was like an early theory that some people had. There doesn't seem to be any evidence whatsoever to suggest that there was any ill will held by the Mansi people towards this group. In fact, some folks from a local tribe wound up helping in the search efforts. So seems unlikely. I don't think that one's has a lot of water. But it's a theory.
Did anybody suggest that maybe Teddy Bear Yuri was faking his achy joints, doubled back, and killed all of his classmates because of some sort of love triangle or? Right.
So Yuri comes to remember him. So he turns back, he survives. So he lives until 2013.
Oh,
so
wow.
no longer, he died, I think he was only 70. So he wasn't, that I guess, he had health issues, somewhat documented. He held on to the teddy bear for the rest of his life.
Oh.
So I promised that the teddy bear would come back. So he held on to Ludmila's teddy bear, and he was the one who had to ID all of his friends' bodies.
Oh my God.
So they brought him back. I guess it would have been kind of really devious of him to keep up the whole ruse the whole time. I've never heard that. I mean, I don't think he was suspected for murdering them. I think there probably was enough evidence behind his actual physical ailments, but he keeps up the search and the quest and the volume on let's find out the truth until his dying day, as do many of the families of this group who kept the pressure up through this they created Dyatlov Group Memorial Foundation. So this kind of continues well into the present day. And the Russian government reopened the case on the 60th anniversary. So pretty recently in 2019, under pressure from the public. Some of the, now elderly relatives had continued pushing for this, feeling like the explanations and the frozen powered investigation of the avalanche theory was 2021. So this kind of predates that. But the 2019 reopening on public pressure from the Russian government basically concludes in May 2020 that avalanche plus the exposure, hypothermia are the conclusive reasons. However, the official documentation also specifically calls out that it wasn't UFOs.
Oh, well. Oh, methinks they doth protest too much.
Right. If it's not a plausible explanation, why allude to it?
Right. They didn't say that hydroelectricity played any role.
Right.
Why specify UFOs? I guess probably because the UFO people are so loud.
Yeah.
And so they have their own corner of the internet, right? You want to say no, I don't think it was probably not a serial killer either.
Right. I think they probably wanted to say hey UFO people, we're absolutely not opening that chapter again. So that's been kind of the last word on it. Since in the archives, I think adding to the whole mystery of this, as has probably come up in other omnibus episodes, the archives of the Soviet era, circa 1959, like the archives were opened for a little while in the 90s and then were shut again and are now mostly inaccessible. So a lot of the primary artifacts on this are never going to be kind of touched again beyond what was already brought to light. So this is also kind of one of those, like almost a closed room mystery, locked room mystery, where we probably won't learn a ton more than we already know.
Well, so are you satisfied by the Disney enabled conclusions of the final investigation? Are the books closed on this, or do you feel like there's enough unexplained, the missing eyeballs for one, the way the bodies are distributed? Like if the avalanche hits and everybody's like, get out of the tent, and they cut a slit in it, that's all plausible. Come on, everybody, run! And then they all burst out, and two of them are gravely injured, and they disperse from one another, which is the first sort of... But let's say there's a blizzard, let's say there's a terrible wind.
Right.
But still, where's the tongue and eyeballs?
Where's the tongue and eyeballs? I think that's really the quintessential question. And like, why are they orange?
I feel like there are a couple of ideas that were not explored, and one of them is it possible that the tent had some kind of hallucinogenic mold in it?
Yeah. Well, one of the theories that I think has been floated, I don't think is a great one, but like a theory that exists involves hallucinogenic, I think it's mushrooms. Mm-hmm. So apparently there are some I think they're mushrooms that some of the local indigenous folk will sometimes ingest, and it's usually some kind of like a secondhand ingestion. So I think I'm probably going to get this a little bit wrong, but like feed the mushrooms to an animal that's okay digesting it, and then like eat some meat from that animal, or like, yeah.
You eat some tripping rabbit, some rabbit that's like, whoa, and you're like, that's the one, grab that rabbit.
Yep. That rabbit looks crazy. So like, then that's the kind of secondhand. So there's some kind of like safe-ish way that they're getting these hallucinogens, and that's like involved in some kind of ritual activities or religious like ritual. But that doesn't seem like it factored in. But there's hallucinogens floating around this area. Yeah. So that's a thing that could have been involved. It's possible. And, this is a group of young people. They seem like they're very dedicated outdoors people, but doesn't mean they're not like into also taking some kind of weird risks when they're out there in the elements.
Well, it only takes one tripping rabbit to maybe set off you're in the tent, you see some orbs, all of a sudden everybody's like, whoa, what's going on? Right. And then you're having a bad trip, and your friends all look like lizards, and you run in all different directions.
Sounds like an absolute nightmare. I think the only thing that I can imagine being worse than camping in negative 50-degree weather is tripping on bad stuff and being out in those elements.
Yeah, right. I mean, it could bring you together, but you have to take it, maybe, and the other one would be carbon monoxide poisoning from all being in a tiny tent and exhaling on each other.
Correct. So also, I'm no tent expert, but I'm pretty sure you have to be really careful if you're setting up like a fire in your tent and create the ventilation for it. I think mostly you don't do that. Right. Mostly you have a fire outside of the tent. And if you can see pictures of the way that the tent, you can see pictures from the trip of how they had set up their tent. And you can also see pictures of the way that the tent was found. And there's like a pipe. So I assume that there was an attempted ventilation, in the tent with some kind of cooking or heat source of a fire.
But I guess if you had a lantern or something that was giving off fatal gas, typically your reaction to that is to go to sleep, not to have everybody freak out and run in different directions.
Right. So probably you just pass out, and it would actually be, I would assume, a pretty peaceful and uneventful end where they'd all probably be in the same place. Maybe one person, is getting a little bit more oxygen and like gets out while they're, still conscious enough to. But yeah, I think that the kind of like final like take that I have on this story is it's probably the avalanche plus the winds, but there's enough mystery here that it feels like you want to leave the book kind of cracked open.
Yeah, I wonder if we're not living in a time where, because this is also tantalizing and because the world, I think, increasingly has less and less mystery in it.
Yeah.
Because we've explored all the wild corners and science is telling us that everything is understandable, that maybe we're leaving these books cracked open because we need there to be unknowables, when in fact we should just close the books on them and say like, it was probably an avalanche, but also who cares? And right. Let's not keep saying that there are UFOs, because we haven't even started talking about whether it was a Yeti or not.
Yes. There is a Yeti take on this. I don't love the Yeti take. There's a couple photos that look a little Yeti adjacent. Yeah. Oh, there's a photo that was taken on one of the group members' cameras. It's probably just a tall-ish man in the group from a distance, but he's wearing gear and he kind of looks like a Yeti. Mm-hmm. So, well, was it a Yeti? Could have been.
And that concludes the Dyatlov Pass incident. Entry 389.1SA2314. Certificate number 48070 in the omnibus. Futurelings, our story today took place before there was social media. If there had been social media, there would be 50,000 pictures that had all been taken, most of them selfies, but we would probably have a much better idea. Somebody would have live streamed the avalanche. None of this is an endorsement of social media. I think it's better to live in a world full of mystery, where you only take one picture every 4 to 6 weeks like we used to do. Mm-hmm. And then we all have to fill in the gaps with our imagination, and that's what I'm advocating for you. But if you still are addicted or still feel it's necessary to be on the internet and to go on social media, I encourage you to visit with other Futurelings on Facebook, Reddit, Instagram, Discord. Really, I've started going to the Omnibus Discord group periodically, and I think they're a lively bunch. I wouldn't have guessed.
Excellent.
A bunch of gamers over there, and they are pretty fun and funny. So I recommend you visit all those places. You can watch today's show and all of the Omnibus 2.0 shows on YouTube at youtube.com/@theomnibusproject. You can email us at theomnibusproject@gmail.com, where you can send us addenda about this episode or any others that we would talk about on our addenda program that is available along with the Get to Know Me episode that precedes this one, where Ariela describes a lot about her life without ever touching on the fact that she's like some kind of intrepid adventurer who just like, oh yeah, and then I was New Year's at Finland, and it's like, that's not even, wow, we're just getting to that now. I feel like we could do a whole episode where you just go, oh, and also the time that I went to the Great Wall of China. Have you been to the Great Wall of China?
Yeah, I have. Maybe I'm the NKVD agent in this story.
God, what are we talking? All right. You can find those things at patreon.com/omnibusproject. Also, I encourage you to visit our website, omnibusproject.com. And if you are inspired, submit a story or a show proposal, omnibusproject.com/submit. and that's how you'll get in the queue for hosting your own show. Ariela, when did you submit this proposal? Were you pretty early into the queue?
I think it was around the end of the year, beginning of the year.
Yeah.
So probably a couple months ago. Yeah, maybe 3-ish months ago.
3 months ago or more. Yeah, there's a little bit of a backlog, but get your submissions in there because there's never, it's just really, we have a 20-sided die and we roll it every morning and who knows what comes up.
You never know.
And finally, you can send us physical mail to care of the Omnibus Project to 609 Southwest 150th Street, number 48084, Burien, Washington, Burien, 98166.9998.
Futurelings, from our vantage point in your distant past, we have no idea how long our civilization survived. We hope and pray that the catastrophe we fear may never come. If the worst comes soon, this recording, like all our recordings, may have been our final word. But if Providence allows, we wish you many goods and cheese and hope to be back with you soon for another entry in the Omnibus.